It's the Eastside Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Wednesday, October 5th. I'm Nick Testoni along with my co-host, Joe Briner. Joe, I'm 0-4. There's no way to put it besides that. It looked a little better this week. I think I can do it. I think I'm not out of it. According to ESPN, I have a 5% chance of making the playoffs. But if I would have played Kirk Cousins, I would have had a win. Instead, Marcus Mariota decided to stick it up my ass. But that's okay. Joe, what are your takeaways from this past week 4?
So you're saying there's a chance. Speaking of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, of course, the quarterback that I've been riding with. I have been bashing him the past few weeks, but he finally put up a good week for me against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think he had about 26 fantasy points. He did add a rushing touchdown in there as well. So super happy with that performance. Just thinking of that just because we brought up quarterbacks. I know we'll get into the fantasy matchups later, so I'm excited to get into this.
Of course. Joe, you want to get into the news?
Let's do it.
All right. Cordell Patterson is on the IR for his knee. That's at least 4 weeks. I believe Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley were the guys who benefited from the most. I know who didn't benefit from it. Like I said, it was Marcus Mariota. He didn't do anything, but that's in the past.
Huntley came
Cordell
out of nowhere, dude. I swear, he got the red zone touches at least later in the game, and I mean,
who, Huntley?
Yeah, Huntley.
Yeah. Well, we might see him in relevant TDs of the week.
Yeah.
Javonte Williams tore his ACL and LCL in the right knee. He is done for the year. No comment.
I don't have too much to say. He was the start of the week, so that does suck. I mean, he was looking good, and Melvin Gordon fumbled again. So Javonte Williams was actually getting the full workload, and then he gets the full workload, and then he tears his ACL and LCL just to put the cherry on top. And what's his name? Mike Boone. Is that his first name? I know his last name.
Mike Boone, former Viking.
He was the one who got the work, not Melvin Gordon, when Javonte actually went out.
So to add on to this, Latavius Murray, who scored a touchdown for the Saints in London this week, he was signed by the Broncos off the Saints practice squad. You know, I mean, it's a week notice, and they're playing on Thursday Night Football, so I don't know what that's going to look like, but obviously they're not going to be content with Melvin Gordon, who's been banged up and fumbled 4 times in 4 weeks, and Mike Boone.
Yeah, so I don't see anything for this upcoming Thursday night game, but I do think it's kind of tasty. Latavius Murray's just been a guy that's kind of been able to go anywhere and kind of get the job done. I mean, like we saw, he went back to the Saints and he did score a touchdown, so we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that and see what happens.
Coach Ron Rivera said Monday, it's looking very promising for Brian Robinson to play week 5. He, of course, was shot 2 times right before the year, and he had beat out Antonio Gibson for that starting job coming into the year. So Brian Robinson, who I traded to you, Joe, looking promising. He could be off your IR spot, maybe in your lineup sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story now. I mean, looking back on it when it happened, it was very sad and it sucked considering it was just, I believe it was an attempted carjacking that he was kind of fighting to not give up his car and ended up getting shot twice. But for him to be back and for it to be very promising already to play in week 5 when he had to sit out the first 4 weeks. I mean, I saw him doing individual work like week 2, I think. So, I mean, to my knowledge, he's going to be coming back, and if he gets involved week 5, I mean, it's going to be looking good. We'll see what happens. I know Antonio Gibson's snap counts have gone down every single week, so they're definitely looking for someone to come in and be that lead running back because, I mean, as we saw in the offseason, Antonio Gibson was just not like Brian Robinson was winning that job. So it's very up in the air right now. We will see what happens, but Brian Robinson could be a very sneaky fantasy play come like week 6 or 7.
Cowboys team owner Jerry Jones said Tuesday that Dak Prescott isn't able to comfortably grip footballs with his surgically repaired right thumb. So looking doubtful for week 5 against the Rams. One more week of Cooper Rush, who continues to win.
Undefeated Cooper Rush.
You're damn right he is. Rashad Bateman picked up a midfoot injury Sunday versus the Bills. I don't think he played most of the 4th quarter, so that's going to be something we look at maybe in our show later in the week on Saturday. Tyree Kill, this is an interesting one, Joe. I don't know if you saw this. Tyree Kill, remember, I was still in college. I was still a college student, you know, back in the spring. I remember there was a big sweepstake for Tyree Kill. He was either going to New York to be a Jet or the Dolphins. He said the reason he's a Dolphin and not a Jet due to state taxes. What are you going to do?
I'm sure Zach Wilson had nothing to do with that.
Well, that was the news, Joe. Before we get into the relevant TDs of the week, we have a guest. He's the commissioner. He's a two-time champion, and
Ooh.
somehow he always has a first overall pick in this draft. It's Andy Collins.
What's up, guys? How you doing? I'm gonna plead the fifth on all those accusations that I just heard right there.
Oh, so you're not the commissioner. Now
that one I'll take credit for.
He did try to not be the commissioner last year with a lot of hoopla going on, and he was fed up with the boys. So I think Derek was the temporary commissioner, and I think Andy's weaseled his way back in.
the Kevin MacArthur of our league. Shout out to
Exactly.
people who get that reference. Andy, I pulled you in. How about we go relevant TDs of the week? I got a good list right here.
Who in the blue hell are you?
Starting off first, Latavius Murray. Alvin Kamara was a surprise scratch, and I know a lot of people, including Soup in another league, started Alvin Kamara because he didn't get up in time. He played in London. So Latavius Murray gets pulled up. He scores a touchdown, owned in 0.2% of leagues. Thank goodness. A couple guys we've already talked about. Caleb Huntley. He scored 0.0% of leagues. Thank goodness for Caleb Huntley. How about in Detroit? So no DeAndre Swift. Obviously, we'll talk about later. TJ Hawkinson had a big day. Jamal Williams got into the end zone, but not Craig Reynolds, but Justin Jackson gets in the end zone, 0.2% of leagues. Indianapolis. It's not Michael Pittman. Sorry, Andy. It's Mo Alley Cox finds the end zone twice, I believe. 1.9% of leagues.
I was throwing things.
Here's a good one. In Tennessee, I have no idea how you pronounce this name, but this guy got into the end zone. He's a tight end. Chigoziem Okonkwo from the Tennessee Titans.
That was perfect.
0.0% of leagues.
0.0. Those are the best when it's 0.0. Not a soul.
So Zay Jones was a scratch in Jacksonville, but it wasn't Christian Kirk. It wasn't either the running backs. Jamal Agnew, 2 touchdowns, 0.1% of leagues for the.
That one's actually kind of tasty a little bit. If Zay Jones does not come back, I don't know to the extent of his injury, but Jamal Agnew was playing the Zay Jones role when that happened. So to see, Zay Jones was a viable option. He was on the waiver wire, but he was probably on a lot of benches going into this week. And he has been kind of a viable option. So if he's continued to be out, Jamal Agnew does look to fill that role.
And then we got a couple in Kansas City. This guy, the second member to join the Irrelevant TD Club twice. So I don't think 3 can happen.
Yeah,
Jody Fortson. Jody Fortson reaches the end zone, 0.2% of leagues. And then Noah Gray. He was the guy who came up on that trick play where Mahomes wasn't paying attention. He took the direct snap and went in. Combined, they're owned in 0.3% of leagues. So that was the Irrelevant TDs of the week. Joe, do you want to go into the soups of the week?
You like that? You like that?
Yeah, those were some guys that were owned in less than 1% of leagues. These guys, we got some good names on here for the soups of the week. Starting off with the Hulk, TJ Hawkinson. I think he had in our league like 46 points or something like that. Over 40 points. He had almost 200 yards receiving on his own. Josh Jacobs, a guy that polarizing guy preseason, a lot of people were off of with the Josh McDaniels offense. Had a great week, found the end zone twice against a tough Denver rushing defense. Austin Eckler. For those of you out there, Jake Wills, who have Austin Eckler and have not been happy with the usage, 3 touchdowns finally delivered for you. Justin Jefferson, he is not a stranger to the soups of the week list. Damien Pierce, a breakout game from Damien Pierce with a 75-yard rushing touchdown. Rashad Penny. I love this matchup with Rashad Penny against Detroit. Tessa, I know you started him in our league. I did start him in another league as well. So to see that breakout was nice. Mike Evans is back, and Tom Brady was peppering targets his way. Miles Sanders as well. These are all 30-plus point fantasy options in PPR formats. TJ Hawkinson takes the cake as the soup of the week with a 40-plus point week. Some 20-plus guys as well. Jamal Williams, who was Nick, my boy Testoni, started the week. 0.01 points away from the 30-point threshold there.
29.9. I could have been in the upper echelon with my start of the week.
So close, but that is a great start of the week. T. Higgins, the man who some thought were dead, he is alive and well as a soup of the week. Tyree Kill, Debo Samuel, Cooper Kupp. Those are 3 names that we are not surprised to see. Those are big name wide receivers that have made this list before. Mo Alley Cox, as we mentioned, he is a soup of the week and also on the irrelevant touchdowns of the week. So that doesn't happen too often.
The double killer.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey with a lot of garbage time receptions at the end of the game and found the end zone. So you do like to see that. I know Sam Smith is happy about that. Derrick Henry getting involved in the passing game. When Derrick Henry gets those 3 to 5 catches a game and he puts his work on the ground, I mean, he's just an option that you want to start every single week, even with the few weeks early on in the season that he was not performing. Travis Kelce, another name used to this list. DK Metcalf. I mean, Geno Smith has been getting it done with both fantasy options for wide receivers this past 2 weeks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire makes the list again. He did have a lot more usage than before as well. The game script might have led that way. He did have 19 carries, I believe. J.K. Dobbins, his first time as a Soup of the Week this year, he did find the end zone twice. Jamal Agnew, we mentioned. Nick Chubb has just been getting it done week in and week out. I believe if he's not the number 1, he's the number 2 behind Saquon Barkley as running back rankings. CeeDee Lamb continues to get it done with Cooper Rush, undefeated quarterback. Hollywood Brown. The targets have really been there ever since week 1. I know I traded him way after that. The targets have been there. He has been delivering. It hasn't looked good. If you haven't watched the games with Hollywood Brown, you've been happy with how it's turned out. Josh Reynolds, a fill-in for Amon-Ra St. Brown, filled in that role nicely, found the end zone as well. Devontae Adams, no stranger to this list, and Mike Williams, who could be a Soup of the Week 1 week and a Tyler of the Week the next week.
I think that's what he's been every week.
I think so too. I think he's been single digits or he's been 20 plus.
I think he went Tyler Soup.
Yep.
That's his role right now.
That sounds about right. And then we have our top 5 quarterbacks. We'd like to keep the quarterbacks out of the Soups of the Week. We talk about them at the end, but we don't like to add them in just because they're scoring. It's so much easier to have a 20-plus point week. So Jared Goff comes in your top quarterback spot here. And the next guy on this list, Geno Smith, was his opponent in this game. They almost put up 100 points in this game together. So that was pretty crazy to see. There was not a lick of defense being played. Russell Wilson, my guy, let's ride. Positivity worked. Russell Wilson delivered this week. Tom Brady is back, and Patrick Mahomes. That was another game that they were facing each other, another high-scoring event. And now we get to some Tylers of the week.
Yeah, Mo, that team sure did suck last night. They just plain sucked. I've seen teams suck before, but they were the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked.
We know these are the guys that kind of pooped the bed a little bit. We have a couple sits of the week and a couple starts of the week as well on this list, actually, from our last podcast. Gabe Davis makes the list again. Javonte Williams, torn ACL. You hate to see it. He makes the list. Brandon Ayuk makes this list. I know Brandon Ayuk was actually needed for a win this week.
Yeah, he got enough to beat me, Joe. Thanks for pointing that out. Did you point out that Josh Jacobs was your sit of the week?
I didn't. It was not on the dock.
Josh Jacobs was your sit of the week.
If
I'm going to get a shot, I might as well take a shot back. Josh Jacobs, who had 30-plus points, Joe's sit of the week.
I'm sorry. I did not see that in the doc here, the show doc.
Didn't put it in until right now.
But Josh Jacobs was my sit of the week. That is a great call. I mean, the matchup was not great, but he delivered. So sorry about that. I should have knocked myself a little bit for that. I did not remember. Deontay Johnson, Kenny Pickett even came in this game, and he just did not get the receptions. Antonio Gibson, Testoni's sit of the week. So you see your sit of the week in the Tylers and your start of the week in the Soup. So that is a good thing to see there. We'll talk about the next one. You have Mark Andrews finds his way on this list. Kind of a dud. I mean, the Ravens got the ball like inside the opponent's 20 multiple times on turnovers, and they kind of delivered with J.K. Dobbins in that red zone. Najee Harris. I mean, the Steelers' offensive pieces are kind of on this list here. Terry McLaurin, Drake London, who was Testoni's other start of the week. The Falcons as a whole, they're special.
7 completed passes.
Yeah,
Marcus Mariota.
What can you do? Marcus Mariota had 3 fantasy points. James Robinson, who was our special guest, Jake Will's start of the week, he was telling Spano he needs to start him considering he has been going off on his bench. And the one time he gets told to start, James Robinson finds his way on the Tylers of the week. Travis Etienne, his co-running back on the Jacksonville Jaguars, A.J. Dillon, Jonathan Taylor, 20 attempts, Andy. 20 attempts and 42 rushing yards.
I'm looking at your list of Tylers of the week, and I just see 4 straight.
I did go through the rosters to do
5
this.
straight
from my roster.
I went through everyone's roster for this, so that's why they're all in a row.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and tell you Andy's roster here. We have Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Jalen Waddle, Allen Robinson, and Kareem Hunt. Those all find their way on Andy's roster. Not all starting, but 3 out of the 5 were starting for him. Either Rams running back, Henderson and Cam Akers were both. I mean, they were splitting the work, and that work wasn't good what they were splitting. Darren Waller finds his way on this list again. He's no stranger to the Challengers of the Week. Michael Carter, Breece Hall kind of took over this game. Amari Cooper, first 2 weeks, this was the Amari Cooper we saw. 1 catch, I believe. Christian Kirk, that was a rain game. So with Devonta Smith as well. Both of those guys were involved in a rain game, so I don't take too much into account there. And Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Stinky Pitts.
Whoa, good call there. Kyle Stinky Pitts has just been – I think the crazy stat that's going along Twitter is Taysom Hill has like more points per game in the tight end position than Kyle Pitts, which, I mean, Taysom Hill kind of plays quarterback, not tight end. But
give it a scroll, Joe. There's one more.
Kyle Pitts has not delivered. And lastly, the Washington Commander, Curtis Samuel. He didn't have a great week. He still had, I think, 7 targets. This Washington offense just, golly, it's looking bad the last couple of weeks. And then we're going to get into our bottom 5 quarterbacks.
Oh.
Testoni, the bottom guy, Marcus Mariota.
So
3 fantasy points. Matthew Stafford did not find the end zone once.
I think he had
Tua,
6.
Tua, this is kind of a sorry to put him on this list, but it's just how it goes with the fantasy output. Tua does make this list. Carson Wentz, Commander Carson, has not looked good. And Lamar Jackson actually found his way on this list. We usually do guys that are most likely started for these bottom 5 quarterbacks, so if they're not exactly, that's why. I think Lamar find his way.
I think these 5, they're on some of them on the border, but some of these guys would have been streamed. And for the most part, everything was good. The difference was Lamar and Jalen Hurts had a down week. Jalen Hurts, I believe, had 2 more points than Lamar. So that's what ended up getting Lamar on here. That was the Tires of the Week. Joe, I don't have it on here because I didn't know if it was going to clear. But guess what? We have to break down a little trade real quick.
Yes, we do.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
So that trade didn't finish?
It went through. There wasn't enough vetoes. Look, everyone's going to think.
This is embarrassing.
Look, why don't you break it down for us, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a lot to break down. I'll just go ahead and tell you the nonsense that went down in this league. So our currently sole number 1 place undefeated team led by Diego Grijalva. So his 2 quarterbacks are Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford just found his way again on the bottom 5 QBs of the week. And so my co-host, Nick Testoni, he goes ahead and reaches out to Diego and asks, what are you looking for Joe Burrow? And according to Testoni, which obviously I believe him, Diego's response was Michael Gallup. And so, as you can imagine, I'm sure Testoni sent or asked the trade to be sent immediately, and it was immediately accepted. And then there was a little uproar in the fantasy group chat. I know I kicked it off with a good old what the, and I was wondering what is going on with that. That does not seem to be fair, but not enough vetoes were had. The trade did go through. That just happened recently, I believe. Actually, the trade did go through.
The last 10 minutes. Got through.
So Testoni's new quarterback is Joe Burrow, and Diego gets to go ahead and slap Michael Gallup on the bench. So clearly they both won in that situation. There's not too much to break down. I mean, Michael Gallup had 2 catches. He did find the end zone. And Diego also has CeeDee Lamb. So just to go ahead and
I thought of that too.
Just to go ahead and question it a little bit more, Diego does have CeeDee Lamb as well.
I have all the receipts, the text messages. I said, go ahead, Andy.
Because I got a couple texts this week. I'll leave the people unnamed.
This is the commissioner, for those wondering.
I would say that trades have been the biggest issue in our league the past 4 years.
Big time.
Every year, I would like to mention, I do ask what we want to do if we want to make changes. Often, Nick and Joey will hop in and offer some good suggestions, but no one else ever speaks up. Yet the second a bad trade comes up, I start getting bitched at about not vetoing it or needing to veto it. And it's always half and half. There's never agreement as a league. And this is the bullshit that happens when we don't have the agreed upon structure before the season.
So I'll just say what I think of this. So with the trades, I don't think you should be able to veto a borderline trade. Like if somebody doesn't like it or if it helps this team more than the other. But if you can look at the value of the players and just show that it is blatantly unfair, that's when I think it makes sense. Obviously, if there's collusion involved, then that should be vetoed as well. But I think, Tessoni, you would agree, now that it's gone through, there's nothing we can do about it. You would have given up Michael Gallup for Joe Burrow. I mean, obviously you did. But you would have done that plus something. You would have done Michael Gallup, I'm sure something else. You wouldn't have just –
I was prepared to give up more.
If he didn't bring up just Michael Gallup, you wouldn't have even thought that that's a possibility, correct?
No. I texted him. I'll tell you, I texted him. I said, can I have one? Like, what can I have one of your quarterbacks? He said, you want Stafford? I said, what do I have to give up to get Burrow? Because I have Higgins. And he said, and I waited for a text. I was prepared to give up, something more, like Rashad Penny, someone who's like kind of high. Mm-hmm. He said, Gallup? ? And I said, send it. And he sent it, and that was it. That was the trade. I knew it was going to have an uproar. I knew it had a chance of not getting through.
Craziest part is that he has CeeDee Lamb, too. So, I mean, I don't know.
And my one defense as a joke in the group chat was my one defense in the group chat. The man's 4-0. How could you question him?
Sum up Diego's year because this is really starting to piss me off.
Well, I'm 0-4 and he's 4-0. So clearly, maybe I'm about to get chipped.
Something's working, but on draft day, he literally was MIA.
Yeah, we can't say something's working. He didn't draft his team. He hasn't done anything. He's made like one waiver wire ad, and he's made one trade, and all he did, he's traded for a hurt DeAndre Swift.
So to kick this off, I was also waiting for his league fee. I was waiting for him to join the draft. I probably called him 3 times, texted him another 5. 24 hours later, I get a text, and he just sends me his location. And his location is on a tiny island right next to the Bay Bridge. And I send him a question mark, and he's just like, that's where I am. Nothing else. I'm assuming it's because he didn't have Wi-Fi connection. But this just started an embarrassing spiral that has somehow put him at the top of the league.
Yeah, that's the craziest part is that, I mean, I know we're bashing on him right now. Diego, I do love you. And you are 4-0. So what really can we say? You should be thanking your auto-drafting skills to start in Mike Clay. 4-0. Yeah, be thanking Mike Clay and Field Yates, not Matthew Berry anymore. So there's not too much we can say. Obviously, we may not love the trade that he just made, but it goes through and we live on. Okay.
Oh, sorry. And one more trade to get into. Sorry.
We do have one more big blockbuster trade. It was between me and Soup. I traded away Greg Joseph, the Vikings kicker, and I received Daniel Carlson, the Las Vegas Raiders kicker, from Soup. Me and Soup did this last year. We traded our kickers just for shits and gigs. Last year it was Matt Gay for Justin Tucker, and Matt Gay was actually going on bye the following week. So that was a very good laugh for us because Soup did not realize this year. Soup needed to pick me up. Deebo Samuel just killed his dreams on getting a win this week after that Monday night game. And so I was like, Soup, you know what you need? We need to trade kickers. And so we did, and we'll see what happens. Greg Joseph will probably die before this upcoming Sunday.
And that was trade talk. Joe, do you want to get into our fantasy matchup recap?
Yeah, let's do the fantasy matchup recap. All right. So let's get into the fantasy matchup recap. Testoni, I am sorry that we are going to start with you.
Just go ahead and do it.
We did talk about this already a little bit. Hopes were there. Hopes were there at one point. We did talk about if you started Kirk Cousins, you would have got the win this week, so that does hurt. Jake Wills highlighted by a down week from Lamar Jackson, actually. But Austin Eckler finds the end zone 3 times. And Leonard Fournette on -3 rushing yards puts up 18 fantasy points.
Here's the other thing. I would have won if that last drive didn't happen. That bullshit drive where it was just dump offs to Leonard Fournette. It was so ridiculous. Yep. It's in the past. That's all I have to say.
And Jake Wills' wide receiving core, of course, was his best option was on his bench, hooked on a Thielen. His name's hooked on a Thielen, and Adam Thielen puts up another great day on his bench. But he does have Gabe Davis and Brandon Ayuk that combined for exactly 10 points. Pat Freiermuth has been getting it done for him in his tight end position, so shout out to the Muth. He did have Javonte Williams in his flex as well, who got 3.7 before getting injured. We talked about your quarterback, Marcus Mariota. I'm sorry.
Dude. Jeez.
Rashad Penny, though, is Soup of the Week, puts up 31 for you. T. Higgins, who is alive, and your newly wide receiver 1/2, A.J. Brown, puts up 14 for you. So happy with that. But Deontay Johnson did find his way on the
Dude.
Tylers of the week.
Unbelievable.
And Evan Ingram could be on this list too. He's just not a typical starter for everyone, so that's why he was on the list. But Evan Ingram only 1 catch. That was the rain game.
Let me throw something else out there, just so everyone should know, like this league. It wouldn't have made a difference. But Brandon McManus missed an extra point because of a bad snap. And in this league, for some reason, a missed extra point is -3. Talk about gut-wrenching. Move on. Next matchup. Just go to the next matchup.
Yeah, it's crazy considering that was the snap that was not on Brandon McManus at all. But yeah, I guess that's just kind of how it goes. It's a weird one. The same way if it gets blocked, like they don't block at all and they just block it, then it's going to be -3. Next matchup. So Jake Wills will go to 2-2 on the year, and my co-host Nick Testoni, who I love dearly, is sitting at the bottom at 0-4.
That's all right. I have like I said. Well, let me tell a story real quick. In my other league, I started 0-4, and I came back and finished in first place. Now, did I win the championship? No, because I got bounced in the first round. But I can still make the playoffs.
Yep, so you're not out of it yet.
Don't count me out.
5% chance, according to ESPN. Our next matchup here, the now 3-1 Jackson Edelman Milk with Ice and versus the now 1-3 Squeegee Boys for Bryce Phobel. Jackson did put up a great week, even though Bryce had 147. I mean, usually that's going to win here in a 12-team league. But he ran into a stacked Jackson's roster this week, to be honest. Kyler Murray found the end zone 3 times for 22 fantasy points. His running backs were phenomenal with Josh Jacobs, a soup of the week, as well as Derrick Henry, both of them. Josh Jacobs had 35, Derrick Henry had 24. His wide receiver core looks a little different. He has Justin Jefferson still obviously leading the way with 32. And then Josh Reynolds, a great pickup. Josh Reynolds with 7 catches and a touchdown, puts up 21 fantasy points filling in for Amon-Ra. George Kittle, who was the tight end he got back in a trade where he let Mark Andrews go, has not seemed to find his rhythm just yet in this 49ers offense, who only got 4 points. Alvin Kamara would have been his flex, but he did plug in Mark Ingram because Alvin Kamara was a surprise scratch. He could have had DK Metcalf. He could have put up almost 200 points this week in his flex as well. Bryce's team, led by his triple stack of the Chiefs, we always say, Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Juju. Patrick Mahomes and Clyde both had 24 and 22 points. Juju has just kind of not really been getting done. He's been this slot PPR kind of guy, but just not getting enough volume to really make it worth it. And Mark Andrews, who was the tight end Jackson traded to Bryce, actually put up less than George Kittle. He only had 3.5 this week. He did have Mike Williams and Mike Evans in his wide receiver position that combined for 51 points. So, like I said, Bryce had a good week. He deserved a win, to be honest, over some of these other guys, but he ran into somebody that had a good day. So, like I said, Jackson's now 3-1. Bryce is 1-3. The next matchup here, we do have the sole first place Diego at 4-0, beating Spano, who is now 2-2 after this loss. Diego put up 162, another good week. Joe Burrow, who's now gone, was his starting quarterback. So he will be playing Matthew Stafford from here on out, who did put up, and he'll have Michael Gallup, of course.
He can pick up Marcus Mariota. I actually just canned his ass. He just got his papers in the mail, so he's done.
Matthew Stafford on his bench with 6 fantasy points, so I'm sure he's going to be loving that in the future. His wide receiver core and his tight end is where his points came from. That combined for 88 points of his 162, so that was half of his fantasy output with Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, and TJ Hawkinson. A lot of single digits other than that. ETN, A.J. Dillon, Russell Gage, all single digits. He does have Jordan Brooks and Roquan Smith. We do individual defensive players. They both had over 10 fantasy points as well. So, yeah, Diego's in first place right now, undefeated versus and he put up a W against 2-2 Spano. So now your co-host, Joey Bronner, versus the commissioner, Andy Collins, who I'm sitting next to currently. It didn't start well for Andy. No. Let's just say that.
No.
He had Tua and Jalen Waddle in the Thursday night game. Tua, all signs are pointing upwards that he is doing all right. He is going to continue to get better. We were worried he was going to be paralyzed after that hit.
He is out, though, for this next week.
I did text Joe a good game before halftime on Thursday.
Yes, the game was already over, and the matchup was over before halftime of this Thursday night game, according to Andy. But I wasn't so certain if Russell Wilson was going to do any better than Tua's 2.4 fantasy points, to be honest. He has some big names on his roster, Andy does, that just didn't deliver this week or got injured. Like we said, Tua. Jonathan Taylor only had 3.3 fantasy points. Michael Pittman, 6.1. Jalen Waddle, 5.9. That was kind of the highlight. He did have Zach Ertz and Aaron Jones both had over 15 points. So Andy had 103 total points. I put up 150.9 this week. So I had a solid week. Russell Wilson put up a great day for me. He had 27 fantasy points. My two kind of lower end RB2s that I'm not in love with that did get to start both put up over 10 fantasy points of Zeke and Jeff Wilson. So happy with that. And then the core of my lineup goes to my wide receivers, where I had Diggs, Devontae Adams, and Courtland Sutton. They all had good weeks. Diggs only had 10.2 fantasy points, but can't really complain too much with Devontae Adams had 20, Courtland Sutton had 16. And Greg Joseph, who is now Soup's kicker following the trade, put up 15 for me, as well as Mount Gerald Everett. Found the end zone on 5 catches for 61 yards, 17 points. So Andy Collins does go to 2-2, and I will go to 3-1 on the week after that matchup. Two more real quick. We do have Andrew Atkins over Soup and Sammy's. Andrew Atkins, who has he is the running back one. I just checked it. Nick Chubb, who's just been getting it done every week. 21.7 fantasy points. This came down to the wire because of Deebo Samuel's 27.7 fantasy points. Led Andrew Atkins to a 4-point victory. I was texting Soup during this matchup. He was distraught.
Tough.
As well as Chris Olave filled in on the flex nicely for Atkins here, sitting DJ Moore. He put up 16.7. He found the end zone. Tony Pollard was Atkins' RB2, only put up 1.8 fantasy points, while Aaron Rodgers puts up 16 in the quarterback position. On the flip side, Aaron Rodgers did outscore the quarterback 3 on the year right now. Jalen Hurts, who only had 15 fantasy points for Soup. Dalvin Cook, who I'm trying to get from Soup. We haven't found a deal just yet, but I have been trying. Puts up 10.6, just another mediocre day for Dalvin Cook. Miles Sanders, though, not mediocre. 30.6 fantasy points, found the end zone twice against that Jacksonville defense. Tyree Kill, he was the one upside on the Thursday night game. Tyree Kill did have a great day with 27 fantasy points, and then the rest are single digits with Treylon Burks, Darren Waller, Michael Carter, and a couple defensive players, all in the single digits, where Atkins advances to 3-1. Soup and Sammy's drops to 1-3. Atkins gets the win 129-125. And lastly, we do have Derek Titano against Sam Smith. This was not a necessarily close matchup. Sam, I mean, he has a top-heavy lineup with some wide receivers that can throw up big days, but also throw up some duds, which just sadly happened this week. I mean, he has Justin Herbert, CMC, and Saquon Barkley. That's how you start his lineup, which does look great. They all had – Saquon Barkley had 19 points, but the other two had over 20 fantasy points. And then we go to a few wide receivers that have been pretty great so far this year, but they've also put up a few duds. Amari Cooper, 1.9. Christian Kirk, 8.3. That was his first bad week of the season. Devontae Smith, coming off a huge week, finds himself in the Tylers with a 4.7 in his flex, as well as Kyle Pitts has just not been getting it done for him. On the flip side, Derek's team, only one single-digit player, or actually two, Curtis Samuel and Eric Kendricks, a linebacker. Everyone else had at least 10 fantasy points, led by Tom Brady. Devin Singletary and Joe Mixon both got it done on the ground. Tyler Lockett finds double digits again with 13.1. Curtis Samuel, I mentioned, had 7.8. Travis Kelce, his tight end, put us up. I mean, just another day at the park for Travis Kelce, 24.2 fantasy points. And so Derek moves to 2-2 on the year, while Sam Smith moves to 1-3 on a 153 victory to a 110. Sam Smith from Derek Titano.
Sam Smith keeps hitting me up for trades.
Yeah, he's definitely always involved in the trades, but you got to appreciate that. You know, I definitely appreciate. I think trading is fun. It's a part of the league, so it's always a good time trading.
Strongly disagree.
Yeah, Andy's just a no trade guy.
Andy's made one trade in 5 years.
I had two. One of them was Dak Prescott.
Oh, that's right. That went well too.
Oh yeah,
all right.
I won that year.
Hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll do the Sunday recap, and since we're recording an extra day, we have to have the Monday recap. We'll be back.